welcome to another episode of Thinking Like a Lawyer. I'm Joe Patrice from Above the Law.
Hello.
Yeah, I was able to get that in because Catherine wasn't paying attention. That's Catherine Urbino, also senior editor here at Above the Law. You have stumbled into Thinking Like a Lawyer, which I assume you listen to all the time anyway.
But, you know,
yeah, it probably
may not be.
It may not be, and if it isn't,
Maybe you thought you were getting Thinking Like something else. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there is a good show called Thinking Like an Economist, but
Sure,
that's a different thing. But yeah, welcome, and you are here to hear some scintillating coverage of the news of the week in the legal world, as brought to you by Above the Law. And yeah, so how are you?
I'm doing all right.
Are you talking into the microphone there?
Am I not? I felt like
a little
I was.
bit. I mean, well, because it's a little bit off kilter. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
Is this better?
I mean, as far as I can tell.
I don't really understand microphones. They're rough.
Yeah, no. Well, there's a little elf that lives inside it, and it records the things, like writes down the things that you say into it.
See, I thought it was a hamster.
Yeah, no.
Interesting. It's elves.
Yeah, no, it's elves, and you have to balance the humors correctly, and then the microphone works. So that's our day. That's Catherine's day. So yeah, we were going to chat about the legal stories of the week. Unless there's anything else you wanted to break the ice with here?
No, I mean, I think that our microphone travails are challenging enough. We shouldn't belabor the point.
Yeah, I guess the Supreme Court today decided they were going to take another Second Amendment case. So, that's
probably bad news.
That's going to happen. Well, it's interesting. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I was just about to pitch. I was just about to hit send on this tweet, but it's, obviously some discouraging news. The last time they touched the Second Amendment, they made a decision that was way out of line with the preceding 200 years of American constitutional history. And so there's some reason to believe they're going to push that further. On the other hand, especially for a case that's completely moot. However, which they've decided to take for some reason also.
I mean, I think we know why, right? I think
exactly,
that they want to push a very specific political agenda.
But the ridiculous part about it, from my perspective, the way in which it kind of shows the pure incoherence of all this is it's about saying, hey, you can carry around a concealed weapon without any, states and jurisdictions can't force you to have to, register or whatever concealed weapons, because everyone should have a...
Well-regulated means something very different, obviously.
Well-regulated is being written out of the Constitution, obviously. But
originalism.
Yeah, I know. Huh.
Yeah,
it's weird how those originals work.
The originals put those words specifically into the amendment.
Shrug. What gets me about it is I think it will show something of the incoherence of all this, because I don't know as though the lived experience of gun laws in big cities will change at all, because it strikes me, if I'm running a big city and I'm talking to the police or whatever, I don't understand how it's real easy to make a pretextual stop of somebody who's packing a gun. Right?
Sure.
That's a real easy stop to make. It's easy to say, hey, I felt threatened by this. All the stuff that we question whether or not it complies with the Fourth Amendment seems as though it's real easy when it comes to somebody carrying around a hand cannon concealed. And on top of that, these are all searches that this exact same Supreme Court has mostly rubber stamped as totally cool. Mm-hmm. So I don't really understand how it changes much. They say you can carry a concealed weapon, and then we're just going to have tons of cases where cops say, whether based on anything or not, I felt a little bit threatened, so that's why I seized it and arrested him. And then that's just going to be fine, because that's what the court says.
Sure, but that's also terrible.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No.
I was like, that seems like a bad thing to me.
Yeah, no, obviously. But the issue is, my point is that it shows kind of the incoherence of all this, because their attempt to change the gun laws will not actually change the way in which the lived experience of this goes. The people that the cops stop for carrying guns around already, they can still do under the exact kind of stops that this Supreme Court says that you can do all the time with no problem, which is not great. But hey, some more forward-thinking and proactive regulation would be a better way of handling it. But, I just don't see how it changes anything in a functional way because of the way in which this court has legalized all those kinds of stops.
I mean, I do wonder, though, if this will have an impact on the court reform movement that is also growing in strength and steam. Obviously, Biden has a task force that's been put together to look at some of these issues. Our former colleague, Elie Mystal, has been a big fan of court packing. You've been not as big a fan as we talked about last week's episode, but do think that there is absolutely room for court reform. But I think that
term limits is what I have.
Right. Yeah. You should also listen to last week's episode where we delve into this in a little bit more depth. But, there is definitely a lot of room. And I think that even for folks who may be a little bit squeamish at the notion of big reform of the Supreme Court, if they take these sorts of cases and really try to rewrite Second Amendment jurisprudence in such an aggressive way, I think that this will push people who are kind of on the fence on it to supporting more court reform. And I think for someone like Chief Justice Roberts, who is not interested in court reform and wants to kind of maintain the status quo and shore up the reputation and the legacy of, the Roberts Court, this could be very problematic.
I think it could be. I mean, I feel as though Roberts doesn't care on this particular point, but I do think it kind of exposes that they don't really control all that much. If they do this groundbreaking change and nothing actually changes in the world in a functional way in big cities, I think it kind of shows how useless the whole institution is, which is not good for the institution.
Well,
which is why this is a dumb place for them to try and stick their nose.
Right, and it potentially backfires, I think, in a really fundamental way in terms of court reform becoming more on the ground, becoming more of a thing that liberals and the left wing can campaign on the same way that the conservatives have done for generations now.
Yeah. Anyway. Just another thing brought to you by your shadow docket, the completely very, very, very skeevy and anti-democratic way in which this court now operates. Anyway, I have a question. I think we should.
I have an answer.
Well, let's talk about law firms for a second.
Okay.
Well, before we do, let's just say, hey, how have law firms weathered previous economic downturns and come out stronger on the other side? LexisNexis Interaction has released an in-depth global research report confronting the 2020 downturn, lessons learned during previous economic crises. Download your free copy at interaction.com/likealawyer to see tips, strategies, plans, and statistics from leaders who have been through this before and how they've reached success again. You have a story about a partner who is not on the website anymore.
Crazy, isn't it? Yeah. There is kind of a way, like similar to like this shadow docket, there is this kind of underground way that you often can track what's going on at law firms. When folks leave law firms, it's rare that there's a sort of a press release that goes around it, maybe if they get some great government job. But kind of tracking who's currently on the website and who isn't is definitely a way to find out what's going on at law firms. And at Littler, there was a partner, Gavin Appleby, that is no longer on the website.
Dun, dun, dun. I don't have that sound effect. So
really?
Yeah. No.
I feel like that's like a pretty basic sound effect.
It is, but for some reason I don't have it. I'll have to try and find a way of getting that. Go on.
All right. Anyway, he's no longer on the firm's website, and it turned out he's in some hot water for throwing a client under the bus.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's not great. Littler is a noted employment litigation firm and comes out of an employment case where they were defending someone who was accused of or had a bunch of allegations about payroll issues. And as a result, ADP, who's sort of this, payroll giant, a lot of firms outsource their stuff to, ADP was served a third-party subpoena for some documents and some results. And apparently, they had produced whatever relevant materials within 5 days of receiving the subpoena. Great, whatever. So Littler, in this instance, represented the defendant, and that was who they gave their documents to. And Gavin Appleby apparently represented to the courts that ADP had not responded to the subpoena. And the court, there was a couple of motions as a result of this with, these documents were not produced until the last minute. And eventually ADP was like, what is going on? There's been a bunch of, rulings about it and whatnot. And the really interesting part is that not in this matter, but in other matters, ADP is represented by Littler.
Oh. Well, I mean, that's what happens when you're the big dog in employment.
Sure.
You're involved a lot with ADP.
I can imagine. But the point is that they did, in fact, produce the documents. It was represented to the courts that they did not produce the documents. A whole big issue. The court awarded costs to ADP for having to represent itself. According to Littler's statement, they're trying to make everything as right as they can. And needless to say, or perhaps we just said in the beginning, Appleby is no longer on the website.
Yeah. Well, Yeah.
I mean, listen, misrepresentations to the court will do that. Probably should do that no matter what. When you're also throwing a client under the bus in the process of making said misrepresentations, it gets worse. It gets worse for you.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Yeah, that was a big story last week. Obviously, because I think a lot of our readership is interested in seeing people disappear from websites. And certainly one of my big stories a few years ago was when Greg Craig disappeared from the website, and it was like, what's going on here? And what was going on here is being involved in some problematic cases with regard, in particular, to the whole Russia-Ukraine investigation. Anyway, so keep an eye on those big law websites. And obviously, if you're all out there and you see these disappearances, the only way we're able to know about them, really, because we aren't tracking every website at all times.
There's a lot of big law firms.
There's
a lot of websites. Yeah. There's a lot of pages there. That's not something we're
Keep us informed,
to.
Obviously, at tips@abovethelaw.com. Or, just keep us informed of whatever you want to talk about by sending us emails there. Obviously, we've tried this before. We've never been able to really get a good mailbag going with this website, with this podcast. Like, people will occasionally send in a few things here and there, but we don't really get the deluge of here's like 5 or 6 good questions a week. It'd be nice if folks could send those in. We'll gather them up and maybe have a mailbag
if you want to do it
episode
with a subject line mailbag, we'll be happy to take a look if we get a bunch of them.
Yeah, let's start pushing that again. I just think that that's a good thing. Like, obviously, we do our day-to-day job of writing for Above the Law, but we also do this on the side, and we would love some input on how to do that. Because, sometimes lawyers have to wear 2 hats.
Yeah.
You went to law school to be a lawyer, not an accountant. Take advantage of Nota, a no-cost IOLTA management tool that helps small and solo law firms track client funds down to the penny. Enjoy peace of mind with one-click reconciliation, automated transaction alerts, and real-time bank data. Visit trustnota.com/legal to learn more. Terms and conditions may apply. I got Nota powered by M&T Bank in there.
You was very slick.
Yeah,
very slick.
I'm doing what I can. So I guess we should, continuing the conversation about big law, we're going to talk once again about bonuses a little bit. See, all of the...
This is a very long sound effect.
Yeah, that one's a little bit longer. Whatever.
Listen,
it's
bonuses
deserved.
Probably,
We've got special bonuses happening, and we've talked about those everywhere. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, since you just mentioned Littler, let's talk a little bit about Littler. And while everyone's been sitting around waiting for special bonuses to match the market, Littler sent out their firm-wide notification informing all the associates that they appreciate everyone's hard work. And they gave them hats. Well, that's not fair. Some folks got desk plants, but hats and desk plants, how does that stack up to a, I don't know, like $16,000 to $40,000 to $65,000 bonus?
Poorly.
Yeah, I thought you might think that.
Yeah, it's pretty accurate.
And they're not alone.
No. There are a couple of firms that have been giving out non-monetary gifts. There was some stress balls that were given out. Greenberg Traurig is doing an RV tour across the country of each of their 30 U.S. offices, which is supposed to be a way to get folks together, but is not money. Yeah, there's been a few of those, and they have not been particularly well received.
Hush Blackwell sent out the stress balls.
Right. Yes. Yes. Kramer Levin also sent out plants. They also gave out special bonuses, but their special bonuses were tied to an increased hours requirement, and folks are real salty about that at the firm. So when they got the plants as well, they didn't feel great about it. They still did not soothe any of their hard feelings about the hours requirements.
Yeah. It's one of those situations where I feel like if you don't want to encourage folks not to be giving out the bonus to match the market, because, associates have done the work and they are, talented enough to go work at other places theoretically. So you would want to match. That said, I feel like if you aren't going to match the market, just do nothing. I feel like you're way better off doing nothing than by sending a hat and making it obvious that you're doing nothing.
Well, I mean, I think that some of it's just kind of unfortunate timing in the sense that some of these gifts have been tied to Staff Appreciation Week. And so they've been given not just to staff members, but to associates as well. So it's, everybody in the firm. I think Quarles and Brady also gave out $30 Uber Eats gift cards. Yeah. Which, is another one of those where it's like not money, or it's a little bit of money, but it's not real bonuses. So, those have all been kind of looked at askew.
Yeah, and so some of it may have just been because it was during administrative
right. And
professionals
some of
week.
the emails that went out were, we appreciate you for Staff Appreciation Week, and they went out to the full list of staff as well as associates. So, there's that aspect to it, and I get that they're trying to do something, but it stings, I think, for folks who are hoping that they're going to get these full special bonuses.
I wanted to go to the Uber Eats thing because I think that's there's an important transition there to a slightly different situation, which is what's happening with Kirkland. Now, Kirkland now is giving out big bonuses because they're the market compensation leader, really. Obviously,
they're
there's
the wealthiest. They're the wealthiest law firm.
Obviously, there are exceptions. There's Wachtell, and they're like crazy bonuses, and there's some boutiques that do different things. That said, Kirkland is the mainstream comp leader, I think is probably the right answer. So what Kirkland's doing, though, they have match bonuses, but on top of that, they are now they alerted associates that associates are allowed to expense up to $100 per meal on 10 meals going forward, just whatever they are. You don't need a business reason. We'll pick up the tab for up to 100.
You can do it for multiple people. It doesn't have to
do it
be
with friends and
family members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So up to $1,000 of food.
First of all, that's a big difference, right?
Yeah.
When you're talking about like a hat or $1,000 worth of takeout.
Well,
that's
right.
A big difference.
And I also think unlike the hat, which is a replacement for the special bonus, folks are getting special bonuses there, but on top of that, they're getting this. And it brought me back to a conversation we had several episodes ago about Davis Polk and their gift.
Another person who's in the running to be called compensation leader.
Right. Oh, yes. Depending on your definition of leader, they're not really leading.
Well, they're the ones who started the...
Right. They're leading as in people are following them, not leading as in having more than other people.
Right.
That distinction, I think, is important, but whatever. We also did a whole episode on that. The archives are fun. But that said, but we talked about that with Davis Polk, and Davis Polk offered, in addition to their last round of bonuses, they had these gifts where associates were encouraged to choose, and a lot of gifts were valued around between $1,000 and $1,500. Buy yourself something nice. Basically, get this
luggage,
workout equipment, this luggage, this trip, this whitewater rafting trip, whatever. It was one of those situations where we said that this was a good trend, and while you don't want to ever replace giving people money, especially with the debt that we force law students to go into and then have to pay off as early lawyers. Obviously, they need the money, but it also becomes something hollow, it feels like, when you get that big bonus and all it does is disappear into a morass of
a black hole of debt. Yeah.
And, just offering even a small thing compared to the size of real bonuses, a small token of, hey, do this thing and you will have to enjoy it. We're making you do something for you.
I think two things that I think are very important about these distinctions that we're trying to draw here. It is small compared to bonuses, but it's not insubstantial, right?
Exactly.
It's not a $30 meal, which is very, very little, right? But $1,000 worth of meals, a new workout system for $1,500, that is substantial. But it is not anything that really puts the firm out in a tremendous way. But it is something that the firm is kind of telling you, take care of yourself in some way. Have dinner with friends. Take care of yourself. In which the Davis Polk allowed folks to choose between various gift packages, whichever one kind of works best for them. If you want a trip, if you want new luggage, do it. Get fancy luggage. Take a whitewater rafting trip, whatever it is. And it's kind of saying you're going to need to decompress, especially coming out after this whole quarantine sitch that the world is in. There's a lot of mental health issues that have been supercharged as a result, and making sure that folks are in a good mental space is really important, and trying to force associates to take time for themselves, I think, is a very important thing, and I hope we see more of this trend. Orrick is another firm that has done a lot trying to tell folks that they should take time off and paying them for that time. And so those are the kinds of trends that we like to see, things that kind of focus on well-being as opposed to just your ability to bill more hours.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful trend, and obviously Davis Polk kind of started down this road. Kirkland's doing this. I do think it would be nice to see more of this, because it is...
And as I said, Orrick has definitely done stuff like that where they pay for vacation time and stuff like that. So that is an even more extravagant version. But any of these trends where we're trying to get folks to take care of themselves. Now that we've sort of mostly gotten through the worst of the pandemic, recognizing that there are still long-term effects, even for those who happen to have not contracted COVID-19, there's still long-term mental health effects that we're going to continue to see, as we escape from underneath the thumb of the pandemic. This is real, and making sure that your associates are in a good, and not just your associates, all of your employees are in a good mental health space is only going to benefit firms long term, making folks, first of all, more loyal to the firm, making folks more productive for the firm as well.
Yeah. Well, I have exactly no transition for this. Let's hear from our friends from Lexicon.
Here's a message just for the attorneys out there. So you passed the bar, joined a firm, or even built your own. Now are you finding out that you're doing more administration than actual law practice? Lexicon can help. Lexicon is a legal services and technology provider with over a decade of experience streamlining administrative tasks like timekeeping, HR, billing, client intake, and more, so you can focus on maximizing billable hours and increasing client satisfaction. Call 855-4-LEXICON or visit lexiconservices.com/go to learn more.
To close out, I guess one final thing. I guess this is a throwback to the old days of Ellie's grinding of gears, I suppose. This is like my grinding of gears, literally almost in this instance, although I guess most people have automatics anymore. But
is that a car joke?
It is, because this is a story, unfortunately, about vehicles and vehicular manslaughter, as it turns out, which is
not fun.
No, which is years ago, actually, possibly even on an episode of this show, Ellie and I talked about a tweet from Tennessee law professor Glenn Reynolds, in which he advocated for people to run over protesters because he thought that was funny, which is what Glenn Reynolds, which is what Glenn Reynolds' Twitter account is all about. That sort of horrifying awfulness with the intellectual veneer of, oh, I'm a law professor, but really just like saying the most crass, baseless, awful stuff.
So was this before or after Heather Heyer?
Oh, it was before. And then when Heather Heyer was killed, in the exact way that Glenn Reynolds had been cheerleading, he just disappeared from media for a little bit and let it all blow over and came right back. The law school, of course, did nothing because tenure is a bitch. But this proposal way back in 2016, which led to somebody's death in 2017, is now, unfortunately, becoming the law in several states. Several states now, Oklahoma, Iowa, a few others have these laws in the pipelines, are now legalizing that if you feel subjectively that protesters are in your way, you're allowed to run them over and face no criminal or civil liability for that.
So it's just like the purge.
Yeah. I mean, that was the analogy I used. It is very much the purge logic that for the next... If a protest is happening, then for the next 24 hours, everything's legal. They are...
That's awful.
Yes. It is functionally authorizing a vigilante-style justice to make anybody willing to engage in a protest feel that it is a potential death penalty if they get caught out.
I mean, it's almost as if folks don't realize that the right to protest is inscribed in the Bill of Rights.
It is certainly in there, and it is something that... I
mean, despite what Amy Coney Barrett did not remember.
Yeah, no, She may not be on top of it. I mean, it's okay. I mean, she shouldn't have to be on top of it. It's not like she's a judge or anything. Yeah, so there's a new attempt by these states to basically put the death penalty or the possibility of it on protesters, as well as deputize random citizens to make that decision. It is judged by whether or not the citizen is reasonably afraid of the protesters, which is obviously going to function as coded language. I assume pro-gun rally will, even though the people will be carrying guns, will not count as being reasonably, objectively afraid of those folks.
Sure. But it's just a way to reinscribe racism.
Yeah,
right?
But having a give peace a chance sign probably does mean that you were afraid of that person, I guess. It's fairly horrifying development. Obviously, these are the sort of laws that you would assume a Supreme Court might be in a position to strike down as challenges to the the functioning of the First Amendment. Obviously, this Supreme Court is not going to do those things, and this is the dystopian hellscape that we're in. But hey,
it's deeply disturbing.
The Purge needs another sequel, I guess. So here we are.
But this is real life.
Yeah. Well.
And I didn't even like the movies.
Yeah.
That's mostly because I don't like horror movies. It's not really
that's the thing.
fault.
I also don't like horror movies, but the Purge movies, weirdly, are actually fairly rich with social commentary. A lot of what those movies talk about is exactly this sort of world being developed that we're watching right here. Yeah, so a little problematic. Keep your eye out for those.
I think, actually.
And I think lawyers, we have a obligation to push back against this stuff, to challenge these laws in courts, even though maybe we've got a stacked deck against us right now, to be lobbying that this is just not how you do things, and to, if we were, for instance, administrators at a law school that employed somebody who cheerleaded this sort of thing, to, not let that happen and fire those people would be a great thing to do, but we're not going to do that. So here we are. This is the dystopian world that you asked for. So that on that cheery note, I think we're
depressing.
done. Yeah. Next week we're going to be coming kind of remotely because we're going to be busy all day on the day we're recording. So hopefully we'll be able to get something in. I mean, no promises. So if we do miss a week, that's why. But we should be able to squeeze in a show.
My guess is we'll be able to squeeze a half hour out.
So
somewhere along the line.
We're going to try, but, schedules are getting a little tight this week. But then, so in the meantime, you should be reviewing the show, giving it stars, writing something about it, subscribing. If you haven't already done that, you should be reading Above the Law. You should be sending us tips and mailbag questions and stuff like that. Like a good,
definitely mailbag questions.
A good generic question. Like we talk a lot about the news of the week, but sometimes there are like more broad-based questions. In the past, Ellie and I used to do a show about which law school to pick between applicants who were into a couple of different and like trying to decide which one to choose. Those kind of higher level questions. Where should I go to work? What should I do? What's the best thing I can do for myself for the bar exam? Yeah. These are the kinds of advice questions we would totally love to field from time to time.
Whether or not we're qualified to answer them.
Yeah, I mean, why not? You should be reading Above the Law as always. You can follow us on social media. I'm at Joseph Patrice. She's at Catherine1, which is the numeral 1, as she points out. You should be listening to The Jabot, which is her other podcast. You can catch me on Legal Tech Week, the Journalists Roundtable, as well as we've got a little Clubhouse thing going, the Legal Tech Trending News group on Clubhouse on Wednesdays, if you're into the Clubhouse world. And with all of that said, I think we're done. Oh, yeah, I guess thank you also to Lexicon, Noda powered by M&T Bank, and LexisNexis Interaction.
Peace.
And I think that is the appropriate time for you to say that.